Welcome back to the deep dive. So, when you go to the theater to see a play, there is this unspoken agreement you make the moment the lights go down.
Right. You agree to just sort of suspend your disbelief.
Exactly. You watch the hero, you admire the dazzling costumes, you get swept up in the perfectly delivered lines, and I mean, on some level that it's all fake.
But you choose to believe in the illusion because the show is just that good. Your attention is completely captured by whatever's happening right there in the spotlight.
Yeah, you aren't looking at the edges of the stage. You don't see the frantic costume changes happening in the dark or, the stage hands sweating, the duct tape holding the scenery together.
Or the exhausted stage manager desperately pulling the levers to make the magic happen.
Right. It is a completely curated reality, and exploring that curated reality is exactly what we are doing today.
We really are.
Whether you are prepping for a political science class, managing a complex team at work, or you are just insanely curious about the hidden mechanics of power, you are in the exact right place.
Because today, we're pulling back the curtain on a stack of sources that challenge pretty much everything we think we know about leadership.
We have the original text of Niccolo Machiavelli's infamous book, The Prince, along with some biographical excerpts, historical context, and his account of the life of a warlord named Castruccio Castracani.
And it is a heady stack. To really grasp it, we have to throw away our modern preconceptions of what this book actually is.
Yeah, that is the core mission for us today. We are not going to look at The Prince merely as some, dusty guidebook for ruthless, power-hungry dictators.
No, not at all.
Instead, we are exploring Machiavelli's work as a masterclass in political theater. We want to uncover how he believed that image, spectacle, reputation, and carefully managed appearances matter far, far more than genuine, quiet virtue.
Which is a concept that feels incredibly relevant right now,
Yeah.
Machiavelli essentially argues that actually being entirely good is highly dangerous in a world where most people are not.
Wait, really? Being good is dangerous.
Yes, but appearing good, that is non-negotiable. It's a matter of absolute survival.
Wow.
When you view his writing through that lens, you realize he's basically dissecting PR, optics, and the curation of public personas centuries before those concepts even had names.
So to understand how this theater operates, we have to start with the costume, right? The disguise the leader is required to wear every single day.
Exactly. And Machiavelli doesn't sugarcoat the deception at all.
No, he really doesn't. In chapter 18, he lays out this illusion of morality by listing all the traditional qualities of a good person: mercy, faith, humanity, religion, uprightness.
The classics.
Right. And he flat out says a leader does not need to actually possess these traits, but it is vital to appear as though you do.
He backs that up with a rather brilliant observation of human psychology, too. He writes that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand.
Meaning what, exactly?
Well, he says it belongs to everybody to see you, but to few to come in touch with you. Everyone sees what you appear to be, but few really know what you are.
Oh, that makes total sense. The masses only ever see the projection. They see the person standing on the balcony or the portrait minted on the coin.
Right.
It makes me think of how you interact with a major brand or a massive public figure today. You don't actually know them. You only know the lighting, the script, the carefully edited video.
And Machiavelli understood that to maintain that projection, a ruler has to navigate a very complex duality.
Okay, let's unpack this. How does he explain that?
Well, he uses the metaphor of the centaur Chiron from ancient mythology, half man and half beast.
Right.
He argues that a successful ruler must know how to play both roles. You use the laws, the diplomacy, the human part, whenever you possibly can, but human laws often fail. And when they do, you must know how to lean into the beast.
And he divides the beast into two distinct animals, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. The fox and the lion. This is where the psychological mechanism of his strategy really becomes clear.
Okay, lay it on me.
You have to be a fox to recognize the traps and the snares that your enemies set for you, because a lion is too blindly aggressive to see a trap until he's caught in it.
Oh, interesting.
But you also have to be a lion to frighten off the wolves, because a fox isn't physically strong enough to fight them.
So you can't just be one or the other.
Exactly. If you just rely on pure brute force like the lion, you show the audience you don't actually understand what you're doing. You need the cunning of the fox to recognize threats and to maintain the grand illusion.
But wait, hold on. If you are constantly faking it, relying on the cunning of the fox to pretend you have all these virtues, doesn't the facade eventually crack?
That is the natural assumption, yeah.
I mean, think about your own life, or anyone listening. If you've ever had a boss who claims to have an open door policy, but completely bites your head off the second you bring up a problem,
Right. You know exactly what happened.
yeah, the audience eventually figures out that you're a fraud, and the trust is just gone.
We assume lies catch up with you. But Machiavelli argues that the facade only cracks if the leader is completely rigid in their personality.
So what's the workaround?
His solution to your scenario is total flexibility. A prince must have a mind ready to turn itself accordingly as the winds and variations of fortune force it.
Okay, so you just adapt.
Right. If you are deeply, rigidly tied to actual virtue, you will break when a crisis demands that you be ruthless. But if you view virtue merely as a costume, you can simply change outfits whenever the political weather changes.
Because you were never firmly planted in one morality to begin with.
Exactly. You never break.
But did anyone actually pull that off back then? I mean, it sounds exhausting to constantly switch masks depending on which way the wind is blowing. Is this just theory, or does he point to someone who made it work?
Oh, he points directly to Pope Alexander VI as the ultimate actor.
A pope. Really?
Yes. Machiavelli notes that Alexander did nothing else but deceive men. He never thought of doing otherwise. He would swear these great solemn oaths that he had absolutely no intention of keeping.
And people bought it.
Every time. His deceptions always succeeded. The reason it worked is that Alexander perfectly understood the gullible side of mankind.
Which is what? That we want to be lied to.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
He recognized that people want to be deceived if the deception makes them feel secure. The audience wants to believe the performance because the alternative, facing a chaotic, unpredictable reality, is just terrifying.
Wow. Okay, so playing the saint works when things are calm and the audience is happily watching the show. But here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when the theater catches fire?
Right when things go wrong.
Yeah, what happens when crime spikes or a region falls into total chaos and the audience starts getting unruly? You can't just smile and project gentle humanity then. You have to put on a very different kind of show.
You have to shift from the fox back to the lion. But the crucial thing to understand here is that even the lion's violence must be highly theatrical.
It can't just be random.
Exactly. It cannot be random brute force.
This brings us to the story of Cesare Borgia in Chapter 7, which is just incredibly cinematic.
It really is a wild story.
So Borgia takes over a region called the Romagna, and the Romagna is complete disaster. It's full of robbery, violent factions, just total lawlessness.
A real mess.
Right. Borgia knows he has to pacify the area to maintain control, but he also knows he can't be seen doing the dirty work himself. If he comes in cracking skulls, he ruins his image as a benevolent savior.
So he utilizes a proxy. He appoints a minister named Ramiro Dorco. Machiavelli describes Dorco as a swift and cruel man.
And Borgia gives him absolute, unchecked power.
He essentially winds Dorco up and lets him loose to brutally purge the region of crime.
Which Dorco successfully does. He completely pacifies the region, but the physical mechanism of doing that was so harsh that he generates a massive amount of hatred among the people.
Right, they're furious and traumatized.
So now Borgia has a serious problem. The region is safe, but the audience is turning against his administration, so Borgia decides to clear his own name, distance himself from the cruelty, and win back the crowd.
And the way he does it is by staging this incredibly gruesome theatrical event.
Yeah, one morning he has this cruel minister, Dorco, executed. But he doesn't just quietly lock him in a dungeon. He leaves Dorco in the public piazza at Cesena, cut into 2 pieces.
With a wooden block and a bloody knife right beside him.
It's wild.
The psychological precision of that moment is astounding. What's fascinating here is that Machiavelli observes that the barbarity of this spectacle caused the people to be at once satisfied and dismayed.
It's the ultimate blame shifting, but executed as a public performance. I mean, think about how this translates to the corporate world today.
Oh, absolutely.
It is exactly like a CEO hiring a notoriously ruthless hatchet man consultant to come in, fire half the staff, slash benefits, and do all the deeply unpopular restructuring that the company supposedly needs.
Yes, yes.
And then once all the dirty work is finished, the CEO publicly fires that consultant, denouncing their harsh methods in order to look like the hero to the surviving employees. Borgia just did it with a literal chopping block.
That is a perfect parallel. It is outsourcing the cruelty and monopolizing the mercy.
Right.
If we connect this to Machiavelli's broader theories on cruelty in Chapter 17, it perfectly illustrates his most famous question. Is it better to be loved or feared?
And he says feared, right?
He concludes it is much safer to be feared. The sociological reason for this is that love is a weak bond of obligation. People will break it the second it benefits them because humans are inherently self-interested.
But fear doesn't work like that.
No. Fear is a dread of punishment that never leaves you.
But there is a massive caveat to that, isn't there? Because fear can easily tip over into something much more destructive.
Yes, the boundary between fear and hatred. You must inspire fear without crossing the line into making the people actually hate you.
Because hate is dangerous.
Hatred is the one thing a leader cannot survive, because hatred overrides self-interest. People who hate you will risk their own lives, their own safety, just to see you fall.
And that leads to conspiracies.
Exactly. That leads directly to rebellions. So this spectacle of violence has to be perfectly calibrated. Borgia used Dorco to inspire the fear necessary to establish order.
But to prevent the resulting hatred from sticking to himself, Borgia sacrificed Dorco in a shocking piece of street theater.
It was a carefully staged narrative designed to inspire awe, satisfy the public's desire for revenge, and permanently deflect the hate.
It's dark, but the theatrical genius of it is undeniable. Okay, so executing a rogue manager in the town square is for absolute emergencies. Spectacles of violence are for extreme crises.
Right.
But what about a Tuesday? How does a leader maintain this illusion of power in their mundane day-to-day operations, like, say, balancing the budget? Because if there's one thing that will make an audience turn on you faster than violence, it's hitting their wallets.
Economics is absolutely where the illusion of political theater faces its toughest reality check. Managing the optics of money is incredibly tricky.
Right, and in Chapter 16, Machiavelli tackles this by looking at liberality, meaning generosity versus meanness or stinginess, and I actually really struggled with his logic here. Well, if the whole premise of this book is that people judge entirely by what they see, shouldn't a prince want to be seen as the most generous person in the world?
You'd think so.
Shouldn't he be out there hosting massive festivals, throwing gold coins to the crowd, and funding beautiful public works? Being a penny pincher feels like terrible PR.
It seems counterintuitive until you look at the long-term mathematical reality of that kind of theater.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Machiavelli completely agrees that having the reputation for being generous is a massive asset.
Okay.
The problem is the mechanism of maintaining it. If you are truly generous in a quiet, honest, behind-the-scenes way, nobody notices. You don't get any public credit for quiet charity.
True.
So to actually secure the public reputation for generosity, you have to throw those lavish, highly visible spectacles. You have to constantly put on the $1 million fireworks show.
But the fireworks cost money. You can only do that for so long before the treasury is just empty.
Exactly. Doing this constantly drains the state's resources, and eventually the money runs out. To keep up the act, to keep funding the theater of generosity, the prince has no choice but to start taxing the people heavily.
Oh, wow. So he has to become rapacious and start squeezing his own citizens?
He does.
And nothing generates that dangerous hatred we just talked about faster than taxation. I mean, Machiavelli has that incredible line where he says, men forget the death of their father faster than the loss of their patrimony.
It's a brutal truth.
Humans have this intense psychological aversion to losing what they already own.
Loss aversion is a powerful force. So your attempt to buy their love through the theater of generosity ultimately forces you to do the one thing that guarantees their hatred. You end up taking their property.
Right.
Therefore, Machiavelli says it is actually much smarter to just accept the reputation of being a miser right from the beginning.
So you just take the bad PR hit up front. It makes me think of a company that is going through a tough quarter. Management could try to keep morale up by throwing a lavish corporate retreat, but to pay for it, they end up having to cancel everyone's end-of-year bonuses.
A terrible idea.
Yeah, the temporary joy of the party is instantly destroyed by the resentment of losing the bonus.
Right, and Machiavelli is explaining how that perception slowly flips over time. Initially, being a miser makes you unpopular, but it's a long game.
How does the perception flip?
Over time, the citizens realize that the prince's extreme frugality means he can defend the state, fight off invaders, and maintain public order without having to raise their taxes.
Oh, I see.
And suddenly the public perception shifts. He is viewed as generous to the massive majority of people whom he doesn't tax, and he's only viewed as mean to the tiny minority of elites who no longer get lavish gifts from him.
You essentially redefine what generosity means. You are generous by leaving them alone.
Exactly. The only exception to this rule, the only time lavish, theatrical generosity actually works is when you are giving away other people's money.
Like who?
Machiavelli points to historical conquerors like Cyrus or Alexander the Great. When you are out looting conquered territories, you should squander that wealth freely. Throw it to the soldiers, throw it to the crowds. Giving away someone else's wealth adds massively to your reputation. Squandering your own destroys it.
Okay, so you are practicing economic stinginess at home, and occasionally you've had to use some strategic fear to maintain order. Inevitably, people are going to start grumbling.
Naturally.
The citizens might start focusing on your flaws or the harsh realities of their daily lives. How do you prevent that grumbling from turning into an organized movement against you? How do you keep the audience in their seats rather than storming the stage?
You give them a blockbuster movie to watch. You completely overwhelm their attention span.
Chapter 21 is entirely about this. Machiavelli gives the example of Ferdinand of Aragon, the King of Spain. Ferdinand started out as this relatively insignificant king, but he rose to become the foremost king of Christendom. And he didn't do it through quiet, competent administration. He did it through constant, massive, awe-inspiring spectacles.
And we should definitely note here, just to be completely clear to everyone listening, we are strictly looking at Machiavelli's historical analysis of political strategy.
Yes, absolutely.
We aren't taking any sides on the religious or historical morality of this whatsoever. But purely strategically, Machiavelli presents Ferdinand's actions as a masterclass in using ideology as a theatrical prop.
Right. Machiavelli writes that Ferdinand used religion as a cloak for what he calls pious cruelty. He attacked the Moors, he assailed Africa, he invaded Italy, he attacked France. He was constantly launching these massive, era-defining campaigns.
The brilliance of Ferdinand's strategy wasn't just in the military victories, it was the pacing, the sheer velocity of the events.
What do you mean by the velocity?
Machiavelli notes that his actions arose one out of the other so quickly that he kept the minds of his people in suspense and admiration.
So, what does this all mean? It is exactly like a magician's sleight of hand. The core mechanic is misdirection.
Precisely.
You keep the audience looking at the flashy, loud explosions over there across the sea so they don't look at the boring or restrictive domestic policies right in front of them over here. But what's the psychological mechanism that makes that work? Why don't the people just multitask?
This raises an important question, and it really comes down to cognitive load. In Chapter 19, Machiavelli discusses how leaders survive internally and how to avoid conspiracies.
Okay.
Conspiracies require time, secrecy, and coordination. They are incredibly difficult to pull off. If the public is completely overwhelmed by the ongoing drama, the grandeur, and the sheer scale of the leader's foreign exploits, they literally lack the mental bandwidth and the breathing room to organize against him.
They just can't focus on it.
The majesty of the state paralyzes them. They are so busy watching the show, anticipating the next plot twist, that they remain a passive audience rather than becoming active conspirators.
And we see this exact same mastery of narrative branding in the biographical source we have on Castruccio Castracani.
Oh yes, Castruccio is a perfect example.
This guy wasn't just a military tactician, he understood visual branding implicitly. When he went to Rome, he didn't just show up in practical armor. He wore this magnificent brocaded toga, and embroidered on the front it said, "I am what God wills," and on the back, "What God desires shall be."
He literally dressed himself in the narrative of divine destiny. He made himself an inevitability.
It's incredible branding.
He was a master of the optics of power, and he understood that the narrative is what history remembers. He's actually quoted in the text saying it was the victory that brought the glory, not the methods of achieving it.
Which perfectly encapsulates everything we've talked about today. The audience doesn't care about the duct tape holding the set together. They don't care about the compromises or the broken promises. They only care about the final bow.
The ends justify the theatrical means.
So bringing all these threads together, Machiavelli's prince isn't just a one-dimensional tyrant sitting on a throne barking orders. He is more like a deeply exhausted, hyper-vigilant stage manager.
Constantly working behind the scenes.
Exactly. To hold on to power, he has to constantly juggle these roles.
Yeah.
He must master both the cunning fox and the brutal lion, knowing when to deploy each. He has to orchestrate gruesome spectacles of fear to deflect blame away from himself when things go wrong.
Right.
He has to meticulously manage the PR of his economics, accepting the temporary label of a miser to avoid the lethal hatred that comes with taxation. And above all, he has to keep his audience perpetually distracted with grand, unfolding dramas so they never have time to look too closely at the man behind the curtain.
It is a relentless 247 performance, because the moment the mask slips, the illusion of power just evaporates.
To you listening right now, I want you to think about the political theater playing out in your own life today. Think about the news cycles you consume, the corporate town halls you sit through, the carefully curated social media feeds of the influencers and leaders you follow.
It's everywhere.
It really is. When you look at them, when you see their public-facing personas, how much of what you are seeing is genuine virtue? And how much is just the cloak of grandeur? How much is a blockbuster movie designed specifically to keep you in suspense, overwhelmed, and completely distracted from the scaffolding holding it all up?
Which leaves us with a final, rather provocative thought to mull over as we wrap up. If Machiavelli's observations about human nature are accurate, if we inherently judge by the eye, if we are easily taken in by appearances, and if we actively demand the flawless performance, then who is really to blame for the deception?
That is a tough question.
Are our leaders inherently deceptive by nature? Or is political theater simply the unavoidable result of an audience that vastly prefers a comfortable, dazzling illusion over a complex, messy reality?
Next time you see the spotlight hit the stage, ask yourself, are you watching the truth or just exactly what they know you want to see?